Back in my school days, I never really paid attention and ended up getting crushed by society's expectations. After a mishap, I found myself back in my high school years. Mike, the guy I had a crush on back then, gave me a cold stare. Get lost, he told me. Staying cool, I returned to my seat and gave a little tap to my desk buddy, Sam. Hey, Mike, could you help me out with this problem? This time, I'm all about hitting the books. Talk about awful timing for a second chance. Just landed an opportunity for an exchange program abroad, and suddenly I'm back in high school where things were pretty bleak. To make matters worse, when I regained consciousness, I was clutching a love letter right next to Mike's hand, confessing my feelings for the umpteenth time since school began. As expected, it flopped. He didn't even glance up, eyes glued to his phone, squeezing in some game time during the break. When the game wrapped up, he shot me an annoyed look and said, Lily, don't you get what I'm saying? I've told you a million times I'm not into you. Don't block my way, I retorted. A girl sitting in front of Mike turned around, giving me a look full of contempt and mockery. I stared off into space, accepting my situation after a brief pause. It was the second semester of freshman year. To my classmates, I was still that typical underachiever, always trying to impress Mike, hoping for a relationship, but getting shut down every time, turning into a laughingstock. Now that I had a chance to redo it, I wasn't about to waste time on childish antics. I ripped the love letter into pieces and tossed it in the trash. Then I grabbed Mike's phone from his hand. If I recall correctly, it was the birthday gift I had given him before, complete with a couple's phone card where our calls were free. But Mike never called me. He only used it for gaming. What are you doing? You can't take back what you gave, Mike frowned. You're overthinking it. I'm not that petty, I replied. The bell rang and I headed to the teacher with both phones, handing them over. These distractions were better kept away from class. Mike looked stunned, and even the teacher gave me a surprised glance before nodding slightly and telling me to go back to my seat and pay attention to the lesson. The math test from the last period was handed back, and the glaring score of just over 20 made me dizzy. I knew my grades were bad, but I didn't realize they were this terrible. The questions were pretty basic. The teacher had only gone through a few standard ones. I wanted to check my answers against the formulas in the textbook afterward. But when I reached into my desk pocket, all I found were novels. Again, another novel. Feeling completely stuck, I turned to my desk mate, Sam, hesitated for a moment, and then gently tapped his arm. Sam looked at me with a distant expression in his eyes. I awkwardly smiled. Could I borrow your textbook? Sam glanced down at the novels in my hand, making my face turn red. I quickly shoved them back into the drawer. He didn't say much, just pulled out his textbook and handed it to me. His white sleeve made his hands look clean and neat. He didn't say a word, yet a wave of shame and embarrassment washed over me. The memories before my rebirth weren't erased. They remained etched in my mind. I once didn't take anything seriously and faced the consequences because of it. After failing the college entrance exam, I ended up at an average vocational school and still didn't put in much effort. I couldn't secure a good job after graduation. Years passed, and when the economy took a hit, one store after another where I worked shut down. Eventually, I had no choice but to dive into the delivery grind. I envied those white-collar workers entering fancy office buildings while I was out battling the elements. It was during one of these deliveries that I bumped into Sam. On a chilly winter night, I was delivering a late-night snack to a securities firm. The cold air was silent, yet the towering buildings stayed lit up with lights here and there. Rubbing my hands together while walking back and forth, I craned my neck to peek inside the building. After a while, someone finally came downstairs, and both of us froze when we recognized each other. Though we rarely talked as desk mates, after graduation, I followed Sam's life on social media. He was amazing, a legend from high school. He got into a top university, went abroad for further studies, and became a high-ranking executive at an investment bank. His journey was unreal. We were literally from two different worlds, and now the gap felt like an abyss. I didn't dare make small talk, just handed over the food and turned to leave. Is that you, Lily? Sam called out before I could escape. Eyeing the empty delivery box on my scooter, he asked, It's not safe for a girl to be out this late. Want me to give you a ride? Earnings for late-night deliveries are a bit higher than usual. I often ran these late-night routes, but it was the first time someone showed concern for my safety. My nose tingled. Forcing a smile, I quickly shook my head and sped off on my scooter. As the streetlights blurred past, now only bare branches reflected on my face, I got a close up view of the world's disparities. Those who once sat beside me were now separated by an insurmountable gap. But I comforted myself. As long as I stayed out of their sight, no one would know how badly I was doing. Unfortunately, life doesn't always go as planned. Even though I declined the high school reunion, I still ran into them. In the dead of winter, during the first snowfall, I got an order to deliver a birthday cake to a hotel room. The hotel manager kept calling, hurrying me along. The more urgent it got, the higher the chance of an accident. I slipped while turning a corner, landing hard in the snow, covered in dirt and water. I didn't bother cleaning up. Immediately checked the cake. Luckily, the packaging was sturdy. It wasn't too damaged. Apologizing profusely to the hotel manager, I followed him to compensate the guests financially. When the door opened, I froze in shock. The birthday person wasn't anyone else. It was Mike, the guy I had pursued for 3 years in high school. Back then, he wouldn't even glance my way. Yet, he recognized me instantly. His mocking look was just like before. Pointing at me, he laughed out loud to the other classmates. "Hey, isn't this Lily from our class?" A dozen pairs of eyes fixed on me. I was too embarrassed to look up, my cheeks burning. Mike scanned me from head to toe, then said sarcastically, "Were you thinking of my birthday and took this order on purpose? Too bad, we've got no seats left in here." As snow seeped into my clothes, making me shiver, my forehead was damp with sweat and my hair stuck to my face. I bit my lip, took all my cash out of my wallet, and left it on the small cabinet at the door. "This is for you." I hurriedly tried to leave, but someone tugged on my shirt, handing me a pack of tissues. I turned around and saw Sam's face. He always had that indifferent look. I used to secretly tease him for being so aloof, but at this low point in my life, his steady demeanor was comforting. At least he didn't treat me differently because I was down on my luck. I quickly took the tissues and left, still owing Sam a thank you. Now, as I took the textbook from his hands, I finally had the chance to deliver that long overdue thank you from another place and time. "Thanks, Sam." Maybe I sounded too serious because he seemed a bit uneasy. "You're welcome," he replied. This was probably our first real conversation at 16. Anytime I tried to chat with him before, he'd just grunt a one-word response. Eventually, we built this unspoken boundary and stopped talking to each other. Looking back now, after over 10 years, it's crazy to think I was ignoring such a great resource. After over 10 years, it's wild to realize what I missed out on. I opened the textbook and started getting familiar with the framework using the table of contents. I summarized all the key concepts and formulas in my notebook. Sam was meticulous in his notes, which saved me a lot of time. All those years of hard work were tough, especially when I was studying for my college entrance exams. But now, at least I was used to the routine of preparing for exams. During the self-study session, I redid some old exams and compared my answers. At least half of them were correct. I sighed in relief. Maybe this time I wouldn't be at the bottom of the class. Still, with my weak foundation and forgotten knowledge from high school, catching up on my own seemed nearly impossible. I glanced at Sam, who was scribbling away next to me, and started plotting. When the last class bell rang in the afternoon, we had an hour before evening study to grab dinner. As the students rushed out, I grabbed Sam's sleeve as he was about to leave. "Sam, do you eat fast?" I asked. He was puzzled for a moment, looking at my hand gripping his sleeve before looking back at me. "Why?" I pushed the exam paper towards him and asked if he could help me with a few questions. Was it just my imagination, or did Sam look a bit surprised? "Are you serious?" he asked. I nodded enthusiastically. After a few seconds, his calm expression returned. He brushed my hand aside and said, "I can eat fast." And he kept his word. I had barely taken a few bites of my cookie and organized the questions I wanted to ask when he came back. His speed was lightning fast. No wonder he always topped the class. The sunset streamed through the window, and the spring breeze carried the scent of peach blossoms. Sam patiently explained the problems to me, filling the scratch paper with neat handwriting. As I focused on listening, his explanations and the faint scent of mint from him began to merge in my mind. Back in high school, nobody could beat me when it came to thick skin. I persistently chased after Mike for 3 years, despite his harsh words. So, if I wanted to recruit Sam as my personal tutor, there was no way he'd turn me down. After a week of asking questions, Sam had grown accustomed to tutoring me during dinner. Every time he came back, he'd bring me something, like a milk carton or a cup of porridge. "Don't skip meals, it's not good for your health," he'd say. It was the only off-topic comment he ever made. I pushed a straw into the porridge and smiled. His personality never changed, cold on the outside, but incredibly thoughtful. He deserved a great life. As days went by, I seized every moment to make up for the studies I'd neglected. I had totally put my silly crush aside. But while I avoided trouble, trouble found me. The last person I expected to give me grief was Bella, the girl sitting in front of my desk. Not Mike. I didn't know what grudge Bella held against me. She was a straight A student, whereas I was a slacker, but she'd always secretly laugh at me when Mike turned me down. Even when I tripped and fell delivering cakes to a hotel, she laughed the loudest. I never understood why she had it out for me. Until now. Bella leaned on the desk, her fancy watch reflecting in the sunset. She glanced at the physics questions I was holding and scoffed. "Lily, what's this game you're playing? Moving on to Sam now? How's that any of your business?" I didn't want to deal with her, so I kept correcting my wrong answers. But she wouldn't let up and snatched the pen from my hand. "Who are you kidding? Everyone knows what you're like." Jumping from guy to guy, afraid someone might call you on it? Her voice wasn't quiet, and the students who stayed behind turned to watch. I had to set things straight. "We're just studying together, nothing else. Please stop spreading rumors and ruining reputations." Am I lying? You're the one throwing yourself at every guy? What else can you do? Honestly, dealing with rude comments like that from teenage girls was exhausting. I took a deep breath, met her gaze, and asked, "Bella, do you have a crush on Sam?" Her face went pale. I hit the nail on the head, but she wouldn't admit it and snapped back, "I just can't stand you." "What's that got to do with Sam?" I sighed, not in the mood to argue with a teenage girl, and took her hand. "If you really have feelings for my desk mate, stop messing around with Mike too. I'll keep your commitment token for now." Bella tore her bracelet away as I unlatched it. "What gives you the right to take my stuff?" I said flatly. "It's mine," Mike returned just then, and Bella quickly turned to point at him. "He gave it to me." I glared at Mike. "You sure know how to snatch things." Mike's expression was uneasy, but he still had the nerve to speak shamelessly. "Lily, why are you holding a grudge? Once something is given, why should you care how it's used?" I laughed coldly. "A grudge? That watch cost over $10,000 and was made to order. Saying I'm stingy just proves you don't appreciate it." I pulled hard, taking the watch back and turned the dial. With a click, it flipped to reveal a polished surface, with my name, Lily, engraved on it. What seemed sincere at the time now just looked ridiculous. As I felt the engraving under my thumb, I let it fall into the garbage, buried with old papers, just like I was discarding my foolish, love-struck self from before. "You must be crazy," Mike fumed, staring at me. I looked him in the eye, my gaze cold. "I admit you're good-looking, and even now, you're just my type. But after countless moments of humiliation and disdain, all that's left is disgust. Mike, listen closely. I don't like you anymore, not one bit. Don't bother hanging around me again." After begging for so long, nobody believed I'd actually move on. Mike sneered. "Don't play hard to get with me." Who are you fooling? Do you really think I'd waste my time on you?" I sat back down, too tired to even glance at him. "Believe what you want. Just don't stand there wasting my study time." Students trickled back into the class, and a lot of them had heard those last words. Some were even covering their mouths, trying not to laugh. Mike couldn't handle the humiliation. With a flustered expression, he blurted, "Let's see how you do on the next exam." With that headache out of the way, I noticed Sam had come back a while ago, leaning against a nearby desk, reading. I wondered how much he had overheard. Let it go, it's not a big deal. Compared to the tough times I've been through, these little teenage arguments are really nothing. I spread out my physics paper and picked out a few classic problems. Following the standard answers, I carefully drew the force analysis, thought it over, and thoroughly understood all the concepts involved. I managed to wrap up just one paper by the end of the evening study session, but I believe in taking it slow and building a solid foundation, better than just skimming through stuff. The bell rang, and I put down my pen and stretched. When you relax a bit, random thoughts pop up. I poked Sam, who was still working on problems. Hey, did you hear my convo with those two before the evening study session? He nodded. Bella seems to have a thing for you, I teased. Bella seems to have a thing for you, I teased. Early romance affects studying. I burst out laughing. You're so rational. If she heard that, she'd be crushed. Sam glanced at me. You're such a gossip. You got all your studying done? I quickly waved it off. No, I'm not asking anymore. As I packed up the English words I needed to memorize for tomorrow's morning run, another thought hit me. Sam, if I don't do well on the exams, will everyone think I'm just bothering you to flirt? Sam looked at me, slightly frowning. I realized my choice of words was a bit off, so I rephrased, will people misunderstand and think I like you? Is liking me something to be ashamed of? I was stunned. Sam turned away and said, your grades are about your future, not about what others think. He grabbed his coat to leave and asked, why the sudden urge to study hard? I went silent. It was like a rusty old clock in my head being struck, the sound echoing around. Why did I turn over a new leaf? I've seen life's harshness. Letting go today just means paying for it tomorrow. Sure, good grades don't guarantee everything, but getting into a good school puts you on a bigger platform, with more choices and opportunities. I used to think, rich family and all, even if I didn't do well, my dad would just pay to send me abroad. But life's harsh truth taught me otherwise. Relying on outside help leads to trouble. In the end, you can only count on yourself. The first step in forging your own path is nailing the college entrance exams. The more I thought, the heavier my heart felt. Sleep didn't come easy, so I just grabbed a flashlight and started memorizing words under the covers. In the dense darkness, with a speck of light, I felt like I was back in those days, studying for college. I weathered storms, but the mocking laughter of former classmates pushed me to register for exams. It became a cycle of working by day and studying by night, which was tough, but once you get through it, it's all worth it in the end. Time flew by, and before I knew it, it was time for the finals of my first year in high school. Full of confidence, I stepped into the exam hall, only to realize the test covered the entire first year. I'd only started pushing myself in the second semester, so I barely managed to review that half year's knowledge. The earlier stuff was almost a blank. Not to mention, I only focused on key subjects needed for the science classes later, leaving others aside, which meant my overall grades were pretty awful. On the last day before break, scores were handed out, and I heard two mocking voices, as expected. Mike couldn't even wait until break to rush over and tease into my ear, I thought you were so smart. Why are you still at the bottom of the class? Bella came over too, still sore about the watch incident, teasing me with sarcasm. Isn't it an improvement from bottom third to bottom 20? All that tutoring from the top student, right? Opening the result slip, I saw Sam's name still on top, ranking first in the whole school. As soon as the grades came out, he was called by the teacher, probably about the math competition. Honestly, it wasn't surprising. I knew life isn't a game where you magically level up, and not all hard work yields immediate results. But it still felt kind of bad because why is the gap between people so big? Feeling exhausted by all the sarcasm, I packed up my books, grabbed all my test papers, and got on the bus home. The sunset outside burned crimson. The summer wind was wild, making my head spin. I sat dazed at the back, wondering how to catch up on what I missed last semester, and with sophomore year close, ellipses and electromagnetic fields were going to be a nightmare. Old regrets piled on new worries, suffocating me. But I had no one to talk to about the pressure of school. Back home, Mom even nagged me for studying too hard. Oh, look at your dark circles. They're hideous. Why work so hard? I made you so pretty, just dress up and it should be easy to marry a rich guy, right? Why make your life so hard as a girl? That was my mom always hammering her studying is useless mindset into me until her own marriage collapsed. She was convinced a woman's happiness solely depended on marrying a capable man. I looked at her, tired and helpless, and asked, Mom, can a life leaning on others last? Your dad isn't just anyone. What if he cheats? What then? He won't, she said dismissively. I lowered my eyes, chuckling ironically. He won't? How could he not? It's been about half a year since he last came home. Just that he's good at making excuses and the money arrives on time. My mom never questioned it. If I hadn't been through it once, I wouldn't believe the man who once cherished us could have affairs outside, multiple ones too. Eventually, with illegitimate kids and all, he moved his assets and filed for divorce, leaving us completely unaware and barehanded. This all happened when I just started college, merely 2 years ago from now. Looking at this well-dressed middle-aged woman who only wants to enjoy life, I couldn't bring myself to shatter her world with the harsh reality. Life? I couldn't bring myself to shatter her world with the harsh reality. Even if I tell her, she won't believe me. After all, I once believed her life philosophy too. I couldn't eat dinner. Before the sunset was gone, I fell asleep drowsily. My dreams flashed back to those messy years. Failing a college entrance exam isn't enough to destroy someone, but I made wrong choices over and over again afterward. After my parents divorced, our financial situation plummeted. I thought, just like my mom did back then, my dad, the ATM, was gone. But there are plenty of rich guys out there. I'd find another one. So I didn't take school seriously and was full of foolish ideas. After wasting years and demeaning myself, I finally realized that all shortcuts lead to nowhere. Memory fragments spun around in my head, making my temples throb painfully. I opened my eyes and grabbed my phone in the glow of the neon outside. Not sure who I wanted to reach, but I saw a few unread messages from Sam. We exchanged contacts at the start of high school, out of politeness, but we never chatted. Seeing his name on my screen actually surprised me. Suddenly, a weird thought popped into my head. This guy's going to be a big shot in finance someday, right? If I get in good with him, could I get some insider stock info in the future? My headache suddenly eased a bit. I opened the chat. His message was sent at 7 p.m., probably after he'd talked to the teacher and didn't find me in class. He asked, "Need help with any topics?" I glanced at the time, 9:20 p.m. Shouldn't be too late, right? After all, he'll be working late till midnight in the future, and it's me who's bringing him takeout. So I typed, "Yes, do you have time now? The KFC near my place is open 24 hours. I was just about to call him in case he didn't see the message, but he replied immediately, "Sure." I quickly gathered all my final exam papers, planning to go over the next term's wrong answers and have him help me make a study plan for the last term. From the first day of vacation, I'd be all in to catch up. Almost got stopped by my mom at the door. "Go to bed early. We'll go on a trip tomorrow to cheer you up." "No way," I was firm. "I just want to study." Sam lived a couple of blocks away. By the time he arrived, the table was covered with papers. He sat across from me, and I handed him a coffee, patting his shoulder. "Tonight's gonna be a battle. You gotta hold on." He chuckled. "Going all out, huh?" I glanced at the math problem for the dream. The shop was quiet, the soft light from the chandelier above bringing a peaceful vibe. Sam was really patient, explaining stuff for 2 hours without getting annoyed. Numbers and theories, when he explained them, were so clear and logical. His smooth voice made everything seem easier and more organized. I couldn't help but think it's such a waste to have someone like him tutor me for free. With the topics cleared up and the study plan ready, my mind finally felt at ease. Bad grades aren't the worst, mistakes aren't the worst, but having no clear direction and plan is. As I packed my note-filled papers, I thought about today's events and asked, "Sam, did the teacher ask you to prep early for that math competition? If I remember right, winning a gold could get you into Harvard?" Sam nodded, not looking too relaxed. "Just give it a shot. It's not easy. But I'm sure you'll make it." He raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" I put my papers in my bag and winked at him. "I know so." Sam laughed, his brows softening as he looked at me, his eyes filled with gentle light. "So what's your dream?" he asked. I thought for a moment, then said slowly, "I want to go to Cambridge." Seems out of reach now, but that's where I pushed to my limit and got the farthest. I miss looking up at Cambridge's red and blue skies and the tiny spoonfuls of lake water. More so, I miss the me who clawed my way out of the dark, muddy depths. But no one else would get it. They'd just laugh and say I'm dreaming. Walking out, the night breeze caught a lock of my hair, and I looked up at Sam, grinning. "Do you think I'm crazy for dreaming like this?" He shook his head, speaking seriously. "I believe you can make it happen." I stared at him blankly as my eyes inexplicably warmed, quickly lowering my head. Even if he never gives me insider info on stocks, having a friend like this is worth it. A tear hit the ground, forming a flower pattern. Are you okay? Sam looked surprised. I wiped my face and looked back at him, smiling. Is it okay if I bug you with tutoring over break? Of course. Then I'll need you to eat your breakfast, lunch, and dinner super fast from now on. Sam chuckled. Sure. There's a park near my place, right along Sam's path to meet me. The octagonal pavilion inside became our designated spot for tutoring. The sun rises early in summer. By 5 a.m., I'd already be there with books and papers. Sam was always early. The morning breeze carried the scent of greenery, passing through his hair. He'd sit straight on the stone bench, his long legs slightly bent. Hearing me approach, he'd look up and give a warm, clean smile. That moment was truly beautiful. I silently hoped that when school started, we'd be in the same class again. I'd even agree to eat vegetarian for half a year. Sadly, it didn't happen. In sophomore year, we got split into arts and science, and top students were placed in a special class. So I ended up on a different floor from Sam, diagonally above him. Can I still come find you? I poked my head into his classroom, glancing enviously at the cream of the crop. Yes, come by. I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner pretty quickly anyway, Sam said with a smile. I worried a bit. Everyone's studying hard. Won't it interrupt you? Sam grinned and said, I'm fine with lending you a bit of time. Classic overachiever. Cool, even when he's boasting a little. I relaxed and went back to class, concentrating fully on each lesson. With new material, I listened closely, tracked the teacher's thought process, took plenty of notes, marked the key points, and refreshed my memory during breaks to reinforce it. Laying a solid foundation will make the final reviews in senior year so much easier. As I was deep in writing, someone poked me in the back. Mike, again, in my class. Still the same Mike, but now I found him annoying. What do you want? He was always ready with sarcasm and mockery. Hey, Sam's not in this class anymore. Who are you pretending for now? Can I aim for a top university? Mike scoffed. You? A top uni? If you make it, I'll call you Grandpa. I recorded him with my phone. Just wait, kiddo. Arguing wasted 2 minutes of my time, but I have to admit, it gave me a bit more drive. During dinner break, I grabbed my notebook of mistakes and rushed upstairs, sneaking into the honors class through the back door. I arrived just as Sam was coming back. I sprinted over, instinctively sat in the chair next to him, opened my book, and suddenly got yanked up by someone. Caught off guard, my knee hit the table leg, and I gasped in pain, momentarily speechless. You okay? Sam stood up, concerned. I waved him off, checking out who pulled me. It was Bella. She's also in the honors class and Sam's current seatmate. She pulled me off the chair and pushed me aside, sounding pretty annoyed. Who said you could sit in my seat? You barely scored enough to be in this classroom. I think you're just here for another reason. Lily, you shouldn't be so shameless. I was speechless. Really? Fine, I'll find somewhere else to sit. Time's precious, and I'm here to ask questions, not argue. The person in front wasn't around either, so it was awkward explaining things with all the textbooks scattered. I had to stand and talk. I was about to move when Sam asked, Want to head to your classroom? I nodded quickly. Yeah, it's open. My seatmate isn't around until the bell rings. Sam nodded, got up, and walked over to me. Let's go downstairs. His expression stayed calm, his tone even. But looking at Bella's furious face made me want to laugh. I left the room with Sam, giving him a thumbs up. You really know how to tick people off. Sam looked at me helplessly, then glanced at my leg. Is it bad? Need the nurse? No, it's just a bump. I shrugged it off with a smile. Thanks, though. For what? For backing me up. Every day full of activities seemed to fly by. I hardly had any free time. Besides exercise and meals, it was all books and problems. Even after lights out, I revisited the day's lesson in my head. Finally, the midterms came, and it was time to see how hard work paid off. For the first time, I was eager to step into the exam room. But when they handed out the results, I was sweating. As usual, I looked for my rank from the bottom up. I didn't see my name on the back page. Mike from the back suddenly yelled, Lily, 600 points. I turned and he looked at me like I was a freak. English 148? Did you cheat? I snorted. If you think I did, feel free to report it. If I hadn't unexpectedly returned to high school, I would have gone abroad for exchanges. I aced the grad school entrance English exams and IELTS, so high school books didn't scare me. My weak spot was still in math, physics, and chemistry. I was far from my goal, but 600 was a huge leap from my pathetic 300-something earlier. Show that hard work really pays off. Even if I wasn't the smartest, I'd work the hardest. Late autumn with its crisp air turned the campus golden with fallen leaves. Sam stood by the hallway window. The afternoon sunlight behind him cast light onto my face. He smiled. Congrats, you made big strides. I smiled back. All thanks to you. This semester, Sam practically lived at my desk, stopping by thrice daily to tutor me. Sometimes, it felt like he was still my desk mate. Autumn gave way to winter, and a big snowstorm hit right after New Year's. Coming back from home, I sneaked a pen into my bag, wrapped neatly as a gift. Sam helped me so much. A New Year's gift wasn't too much, right? I hid the gift in the drawer, half nervous, half excited, waiting for Sam. But he got held up, and Mike found it first. That rude guy snatched it out and gasped, "You remembered my birthday?" I was taken aback and then remembered Mike's birthday was around the corner, but I'd forgotten. I reached for the pen. "It's not for you, give it back." Mike raised his hand out of reach. "Who's it for then? Mind your own business. Is it for Sam?" Mike asked, his expression shifting. "Do you like him?" "Nonsense. We're just students. No need for extra drama." Mike raised an eyebrow. "He tutors you, brings you food, and you're telling me there's nothing more, Lily? You're setting him up as a backup?" "Shut up." I reached for the pen but missed. Mike handed it to someone behind me, grinning. "Hey, backup, bro. For you." I turned, and Sam stood behind me, holding a warm cup of porridge. His eyes met mine, but before I could gauge his expression, he looked down, his lashes fluttering. He didn't take the pen, just quietly placed the porridge on my desk. Then he turned to Mike, saying coldly, "Helping classmates is common. Bringing extra food is easy. I'd do it for you too. Just because you see malicious intent doesn't mean it's there. Maybe it's your own dirty thoughts clouding your judgment." A few words, straight to the point, and Mike froze, his face turning red with anger. Sam didn't bother speaking further and left. For the next few days, he didn't come by. My post-dinner time was suddenly free. As I stuck to my normal routine, I couldn't shake the emptiness I felt. Habits can be terrifying, and so can dependency. The finals were right around the corner. I had practically worn out the physics and chemistry books, and my score surged to 640. After getting the results, I realized a big chunk of credit went to Sam. I should really thank him. Before the evening study session, I hesitantly walked upstairs, peeking into the honors class. Sam's window seat had Bella next to him, discussing the last big physics problem. I watched quietly for a while. The winter wind blew hard, sneaking in through the window gaps. Sam closed the window and turned, catching my eye. Realizing it wasn't right to spy, I smiled at him and quickly left. 2 days later, winter break began. Dad finally came home. Mom showed off my grade report. Both pretty happy. But I wasn't. I didn't know how to deal with a deceitful dad or wake a naive mom from her sleepwalking. In my room, I pulled out my homework. Beneath the worksheets lay the pen I still hadn't given him. The sleek box glimmered under the chandelier's light. I shut my eyes, pulled out my phone, and messaged Sam, "Have you seen the octagonal pavilion in winter?" I regretted it immediately after sending. What a cheesy line. Before I could retract it, Sam replied, "Nope, wanna go see?" Phew. He got the hint. I grabbed my coat and quietly stepped out. Snow started up again at dusk. Sam, always early, stood by the pavilion in a black coat as snowflakes dusted his hair and shoulders. I dashed up the steps toward him and stopped short, suddenly unsure of what to say. He spoke first. "You did well on your test. You've improved a lot." I scratched my head, feeling awkward. "It's all thanks to your help." I rummaged through my bag, pulling out a gift box with a pen, and offered it to him. "Please take this as a thank you for the year." For some reason, Sam's expression turned cold. With a flat tone, he said, "No need. I would help any classmate." My hand hung awkwardly in the air as he avoided eye contact, scanning the pavilion instead. Snow swept in with the wind, leaving a thin layer on the summer study stone table and benches. I've seen this pavilion enough in winter. I should go, Sam said and turned to leave. I hurried after him but stepped on an icy patch, slipped, and fell. Covered in snow and mud, I somehow kept the gift box safe in my arms. You all right? Sam came back quickly and helped me up. I was so dazed from the fall that I couldn't speak for a moment. He reached into his coat, pulled out a pack of tissues, and handed one to me. Wipe yourself off. My bangs were wet with snow, blocking my vision. As I stared at the tissue in his hand, I felt a wave of dizziness. Thanks. I wiped the snow off my face, but it made things wetter, and tears started rolling uncontrollably. Sam, I choked out, why am I so far behind you? He looked startled, unsure what to do. You're doing really well. I knew I had improved tremendously compared to before, but when it came to my goal, I was still way off by dozens of points. When I saw Bella and Sam discussing ways to solve problems more efficiently from the outside, it hit me. Others could delve into debates with him, but I was only listening. That's the gap. I was giving it my all. So why was I still so far from you? So far from Cambridge University? I crouched down, burying my head in my arms, and wept. I was genuinely terrified that if I tried again, I'd still fail, and my family would still fall apart. I knew it all but felt powerless. Sam went quiet, crouching beside me. He took the gift box from my hands, pulled out the pen, and tore a page from a notepad in his pocket. I heard the pen scratching against the paper, and when I looked up, he held out a page with neat handwriting. Persistence is victory. Clicking the pen shut, Sam spoke gently. Even a small pawn's efforts won't go to waste. Lily, trust in the power of time. I treasured that note and looked at it whenever I felt exhausted from studying. Sam got busy with math competition training and couldn't help me as often. I mustered up the courage to ask for help from my teachers, thinking they'd find me dumb, but they didn't. I had imagined them way scarier than they were. They were actually really kind. In the final year of high school, we reviewed everything from the first year. Taking that opportunity, I focused on my weakest subjects, constantly solving problems and memorizing and summarizing. By midterm, my scores were almost reaching Cambridge University's minimum admission mark. The winter break in senior year was just a week around the new year. I excitedly went home with my fresh report card. Even when I was at the bottom of the class, Mom was never upset, but now, with me first in class, her smile seemed forced. Something happened? A bad feeling crept in. Mom shook her head, but she couldn't hide anything. Tears fell as she cried. Your dad wants a divorce. He's marrying the woman who had his son. I was somewhat prepared, but facing it, my mind went blank for a moment. I hugged my distraught mom, gently patting her back and waited for her to calm down. What does the divorce agreement say? How's he planning to split the assets? Between sobs, Mom said, Your dad says he has no money. The property's mortgaged, and the business has debts. He doesn't want to drag us into this, so he's taking it all on himself. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. He's taking it all on himself. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. His excuses sounded noble, but my mom didn't understand. That didn't mean I didn't. My hard-earned law degree wasn't for nothing. Mom, if Dad can cheat, then his words can't be trusted. We should hire a lawyer ASAP, freeze his assets, and let the court investigate. If things are as he says, we'll sign. But if he's hiding assets, we must retrieve them. We can't let others benefit. Mom and Dad were childhood sweethearts. She supported him through tough times. The house, the car, the business, they built it all together after marrying. Time can be cruel. Even the deepest love can end in bitter distance. If love can't hold us together, then it's down to money. My dad bought his mistress not just one house, but even gave coffee shops and tea shops away. Assets acquired during marriage belong to both partners equally. If one disposes of shared assets without consent, it's invalid, and the other can claim them back. I looked Mom in the eyes. Mom, file for divorce. We need to protect our rights. It's our due. Mom was both sad and scared. I don't know how I'll face it with you, I said, holding her hand. We only have ourselves to rely on now. I never thought the family drama would unfold so early, messing up my plans. The new year was full of chaos, lawyer consultations, court battles, studying laws, and confronting Dad without holding back. The stress was immense. Physically exhausted, I could hardly stand straight. Late at night, under the lamplight, I recited formulas over and over, forcing myself to solve problems until I passed out at the desk. In my dreams, I was delivering food on an electric bike, climbing stairs with bags, out of breath, asking for five-star reviews. After work, I dragged myself, legs heavy as sandbags, back to our rented small room, staying up all night to study. Mom was in bad shape after the divorce, relying on pills to sleep every night. Afraid to wake her, I kept the lights off and made no noise. A tiny nightlight accompanied me through many never-ending, lonely nights. I didn't know how long I slept, but I felt someone gently touch my hair. I opened my eyes and saw Mom draping a blanket over me. Her eyes had lost the sparkle they used to have, and the fine lines along her eyes became more visible. "It's Mom who dragged you down." Hurt or in. She sat on the chair beside me, pulling my hand and saying in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry I've made things so hard for you." I couldn't tell if this was a dream or reality. I just reached out to wipe her tears away. "Don't say that. It's not our fault." The moisture felt warm on my palm, and my eyes started to well up too. Even when things are terrible, there's hope that we'll get through it. Mom didn't say anything else, just held my hand. We sat quietly in the dark, the little light from the desk lamp gently surrounding us. After a long while, Mom softly said, "When school starts, focus on your studies. I'll handle the stuff at home." Honestly, I couldn't afford any more distractions. In the last semester of senior year, it felt like we were hamsters on a wheel spinning too fast to stop. We used to have monthly tests, but now it felt like there was one almost every week. Sometimes there were even surprise tests during evening self-study sessions. Mealtimes got shorter and shorter, and in between drinking water and restroom breaks, we were constantly memorizing vocabulary words and formulas. Everyone seemed almost possessed, studying during class, studying after class, even sneaking into the bathroom with a flashlight to study after lights out for fear of being caught during room checks. Public activity classes were all canceled, and the once chatty students were now seriously reviewing during self-study periods. The countdown on the back blackboard ticked down relentlessly, and we'd shouted at the flagpole during the 100-day oath rally. Everyone was running on adrenaline, pushing themselves to exhaustion, growing numb, and somewhat insane. After 3 mock exams, my scores hit a wall, just skirting the threshold of Cambridge University, always fluctuating, never hitting a solid mark. This uncertainty was terrifying. I was so anxious I couldn't sleep, constantly tossing and turning, tearing at my hair. When Sam came to see me, he was nearly shocked. "You look awful," he said. I showed him all my recent test papers, directly asking, "I want to improve by 10 points. Do you have any tips?" Sam had won an award after joining the National Math Competition Training Team, and he was already on the Harvard University acceptance list. Since he didn't need to worry about the college entrance exam, I felt free to squeeze him for help. After carefully going through my mistakes, Sam concluded, "Your fundamentals are strong, but not flexible enough. The formula's the same, but when the question type changes, you can't adapt. So what should I do?" I asked. "Practice," Sam said, handing the papers back to me. "Stop repeating familiar question types. Instead, tackle the ones you're not used to. Analyze the train of thought and entry points closely. Face each unique question, slowly breaking mental barriers." I felt uneasy. There are only a few days left. "As long as you start, it's better than sitting idly," Sam said with a smile. "Day by day, step by step, you won't regret the effort." The soft sunlight and swaying shadows of the trees made everything seem brighter. Suddenly, I felt a surge of motivation. The divorce case between my parents finally concluded before summer came. Mom got the property she deserved. Dad, being in the wrong, was ordered by the court to pay some compensation. We got to keep the house, sparing me from having to move again before the college entrance exam. Mom was exhausted from the legal battle, and her sadness over Dad's infidelity seemed to have washed away. After winning that fight, she felt like she could do anything. She pooled the compensation money with her stylish friends and opened a beauty salon, becoming her own boss. Life finally got back on track. All I had to do was focus on preparing for the college entrance exam. For 2.5 years, I hadn't relaxed for even a moment. I was stretched so tight I was near the breaking point. God, I silently prayed, please let me finally be free. I planned perfectly, but didn't expect that on the day of the college entrance exam, I came down with a high fever. My cheeks were blazing and my vision blurred. It was hard to describe my despair. With the first exam about to start, there was no time to dilly-dally. No time for misery. After getting a quick fever-reducing shot, I rushed to the exam room with my supplies. My mind was a fog, running on autopilot. Solving problems, filling out the answer sheet, everything relying on muscle memory. 2 days, 4 shots, feeling worse than death. On the last afternoon, I walked out of the exam room and immediately saw Mom in the ocean of parents waiting at the school gate. Finally, tears rolled down my cheeks uncontrollably, my throat swelling so much I couldn't even cry out loud. Mom took my bag of supplies, holding me tenderly. There, you did your best. Leave the rest to fate. Mom's already so proud of you. But I wasn't ready to accept that. I couldn't accept that after trying so hard, so relentlessly, it was all ruined by a sudden illness. For the next week, while my classmates celebrated, I lay in the hospital on a drip. The inpatient room was on the ground floor outside. The plants were lush and vibrant. Sunlight streamed through the mesh window, but I felt as though I was slowly withering. When Sam visited, I was staring vacantly at the ceiling. He walked over slowly. I expected him to give some words of comfort, but he just looked at me and chuckled. Confused, I touched my face. Why the laugh? Sam pulled a chair up beside the bed and said, I heard about your brave tale from a classmate, a fever of 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet you braved the exams. During the English test, you fainted twice but woke up each time and kept writing. I wanted to witness the aura of a warrior, but I wasn't expecting this defeated look. I looked at him incredulously. Was this still the Sam I knew? The cool and collected genius? Why was he being such a jerk? I sat up, his words sparking a tiny fire inside me. Did you just come to watch the show? I reached out to him. Even spectators should buy tickets, right? Where are the flowers? Not even bringing a bouquet to a patient. Is that acceptable? Sam laughed, then tapped my hand, leaving a little something on my palm. I brought it closer to my face. It was a round seal, smooth to the touch, still warm from his hand. This is... Sam motioned for me to open it. Something I carved myself. Tell me if it looks right. Pulling off the cap, I saw 3 little figures transformed from seal script characters, marked 1,937 inches at the bottom. I studied it for a while, couldn't help but chuckle. You carved the Cambridge University crest for me? So, even if I don't pass, I'm still a Cambridge student. Sam held back a laugh. No, I just think dreams shouldn't turn into obsessions. I used to admire your determination, but I don't want to see you go crazy over it. I looked down, fiddling with the stamp in my hand, saying nothing. I don't want that either, but when you've put in so much, it's hard not to hope for a perfect outcome. But life can't be perfect. Whether the stop is a peak or a valley, the train always moves to the next stop, never stopping. Sam looked into my eyes seriously and said softly, Lily, no matter the result, don't be afraid. That's right. What am I afraid of? Last time, even when I only got into a technical college, I still managed to get myself into a well-known university for my master's. Would a small college entrance exam failure stump me now? Starting over from scratch is what I know best. After getting discharged, I've been having the easiest days in years. Used to waking up early, even during the holidays with nothing to do, I would grab a book, drag Sam along, and head to the gazebo in the park at dawn. The dancing grannies and the uncle playing the air hoop couldn't compete with me. Sunlight fell across the pages, lush peach tree branches peeked into the gazebo, revealing tender green peaches. Sam lowered his gaze to read, and I snuck glances at him from behind the pages. In a white shirt and black hair, he was strikingly handsome. It didn't matter if he'd change in the future. At that moment, looking at him made my heart skip a beat. Sam seemed to sense my gaze and curved his lips, looking up at me. Isn't today the day we find out the results? I was shocked. I'd completely forgotten about it. Been too at ease lately, enjoying myself too much. I couldn't wait to get home to check on the computer. I logged into the score-checking webpage on my phone. shaking as I entered my exam registration number. As the page refreshed, I couldn't help but grip the stamp in my pocket. Sam walked up behind me and laid a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Don't panic." His deep voice and warm palm were comforting. As I calmed my breathing, when the results page finally refreshed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Did I seriously score that high while being sick out of my mind? Better than any practice exam before. No surprise, I might actually get what I wanted. With blazing sunlight above, I couldn't help but jump and give Sam a big hug under the blue sky and white clouds. I did it. I really did it. The joy of this moment was indescribable, and I laughed and cried with excitement. Sam followed me in laughter, opening his arms to hold me close. When the college offer finally arrived at home, everything was settled. I calmly put the offer letter away with the stamp, one lighting my path, the other waking me in my darkest moment. We were off to a new chapter together. The school's banner for outstanding graduates had my name on it, and my photo was up on the honor roll at the school gate. During the class dinner, my freshman year teacher praised me in front of everyone. "From the bottom to Cambridge University, you're the first I've seen. I now have stories to inspire the next round of students." Feeling a bit embarrassed, suddenly a phrase popped into my mind. "Where there's a will, there's a way." As soon as I said it, I realized someone had told me this before. I glanced over at Sam, who was smiling at me. I turned my gaze to the opposite side at the sound of clinking chopsticks, seeing Bella with reddened eyes. Mike sat beside her, looking at me with a complicated expression. After he mocked Sam as a backup guy with a pen gift box, I hadn't spoken to him again. I had almost forgotten about him. Yet after the dinner party, he suddenly stopped me. Fumbling for words, he said, "Congratulations." "Thanks," I replied coolly. Mike awkwardly scratched his head and mumbled, "Do we still have a chance?" "What?" I laughed in disbelief. "Mike, don't you get it? I've told you so many times I'm not into you." "Stop bothering me." Word for word, I returned everything he used to say about me. Mike's face turned sour instantly. As I tried to leave, he suddenly grabbed my arm. "Is it because of Sam? Other than grades? What's he got that I don't?" I paused, turning to look at him. His strikingly handsome face once had me infatuated, but now I just wanted to ask him one thing. "Mike, if I were still a loser with nothing, covered in mud, and falling before you, would you hand me a tissue?" He was stunned. I didn't expect him to understand. I pried his hand off and strode away. Sam was waiting under the tree outside the restaurant, the low swaying leaves breezing through his hair. I waved with a smile. "Let's go home." Sam glanced behind me, then joined me side by side. After a moment, he asked quietly, "Did he harass you again?" "He wouldn't dare." "Do you still like him?" "No way." Then he pursed his lips, his youthful shyness showing. "Do you want to like someone else?" I looked down, my lips curled into a smile, and gently held his hand. "Sure." The girl who sits next to me is a character. Got rejected 11 times in half a year and still kept going. If only she put that perseverance into studying. But lately, she seems to have found her way back. When Lily asked to borrow my textbook, it was the first time I really took a good look at her face. So strange, it feels like I've known her forever, maybe in a dream. She even delivered food to me once. What did I order? Seemed like it was a bowl of beef noodles. That dream stretched long until years later I met her again. She suddenly turned into my work partner, in charge of legal affairs, still a workaholic. After a whole day of meetings, I grabbed my jacket ready to go for dinner, but she stopped me. She had a beautiful, doll-like face looking up to smile at me. "Sam, do you eat fast?" I couldn't remember how I replied in the dream, but looking at the exam paper she handed over in her hopeful expression, the answer suddenly came to me. "I can be quick." No, I'm really old. Can't keep up with the brain games of young underclassmen. "Sam, if people could be reborn, when would you want to go back to?" I secretly rolled my eyes. Kids from the physics department really are lost in their studies of space-time relativity. Kids from the physics department really are lost in their studies of space-time relativity. How could people be reborn? What's past is gone. Any regrets, you just have to move on. Besides, after clawing my way from a delivery person to a famous university, do I really want to go through it all again? An underclassman blinked. Who says starting over means repeating the same mistakes? Isn't changing fate fun? I teased him. You think this is a game you can just restart whenever? He blushed. We're developing new technology. Want to test it? I didn't take it seriously, but looking into the starry night sky, memories came flooding back. So many paths in life. If I could really do it over again, there are indeed different choices I'd like to make. As the evening wind brushed through my hair, I whispered, back to 16 then.